Venomess specializes in all things poison, damage over time, leeching life from your enemies, you name it. And she is an absolute blast to play. So if you're looking for a character that does tons of damage and feels very tanky without actually being a tank, this is the character for you. On the other hand, she is not one of the default characters you start with. You'll need to progress through the story before you can unlock her. If you want to build based on one of the starting characters, I suggest my Windgrave build, which is very beginner friendly and easy to play, but probably not quite as strong as Venomess. With that said, in today's video, I'm going to be going over all the character building aspects. So, the armor set that I happen to be using, artifacts, weapon, abilities, echoes, affinity points, and talents. After that, I'll get into the gameplay just a little bit, talk about some of my experiences using the character, and then wrap everything up with a few more thoughts. And so, without further ado, let's get into that, starting with the armor set. There's a lot of pieces of armor that I don't have for Venomous, so I don't think this is really 100% optimal. But what I was doing is focusing on things that gave me ability power, and then if I couldn't get ability power, I went for something like maximum health or other well-rounded defenses. Now, I am kind of going for an ability power, weapon power hybrid build. I found I didn't need defense too much, but having a little bit, especially having a nice health pool, made it much easier to not ultimately get killed. So that's what I was doing. Ultimately, I ran with the Bloodseeker coat. It gives weapon power and crit power, and there just wasn't a good ability power option. The next best would be the Vagabond Garb, but I didn't feel like the magic defense was going to do anything for me, so I'd rather two okay stats that work for me, rather than one that works and one that doesn't. Now in terms of gloves, Tempered Sky Havoc gloves. They give ability power and phys defense, and they give a lot of ability power. Though, the Maze Punk gloves, for max health and ability power, also really good and much easier to get. Then Vandal Heart Backpack, ability power, crit power, not much else to say there. But yeah, and confession time, I was just using the Moonfallen set because I was taking some pictures and it looked really cool. Realistically, I'd actually go with the Tempered Sky Havoc head, or if you don't have that, something basic like the Operation Eminence head. Now for weapon, I'm using Tooth and Claw. This is the Captain America shield. Whoever special allows you to throw your shield and it bounces between multiple enemies, sometimes ricocheting back to the primary target. This is something that I picked up off of a recommendation from my comment section on my previous Windgrave video. So, Juggernaut, thank you very much for the recommendation. It's been an absolute blast to play. And this thing, super OP, it melts through boss health. And if you want a tip for easy charging, use a jump heavy attack to gain a pip rather than trying to complete your combo. Next up, accessories. Not super happy with these, but basically I was targeting max health, ability power, weapon power. Get as much damage as possible and just barely enough health to survive. Unfortunately, the reason I'm not happy with it is because of the colors. So I wanted either weapon power, which is yellow, or ability power, which is green, to be the thing that I enhanced through affinities. And here, max health, crit power, okay. Max health, ability power, weapon power, that's pretty good. And here, phys defense, ability power. So green and yellow were the things I was aiming for, and I only got optimal stats on 2 out of 3 in either case. I'd really like 3 out of 3 on the stat I'm investing the affinities into. But I really struggled to find things that were max health, ability power, weapon power, and also had a useful set bonus. In that regard, if you have any recommendations, please do leave them down below. I know with a recent scaling update, it's opened up a lot of sets, many of which I don't have because I farmed a good number of my accessories before that update. But this is what I'm using. It's Spoon of Pristine Fortune, Ring of Desire for the set bonus, and then a Raven Skull Focus. It went fine, this character seems super OP, and you don't need too many defenses, but resilience is quite nice. Then tying into that, I wanted to max out either the Instinct or the Discipline trees. Instinct is very good because of Fatal Venom. When enemies die of poison stacks, they create a poison cloud, which on AoE is really noticeable. But honestly, even if you only stopped at like deadly or explosive venom, it's a pretty powerful tree. Alternatively, if you want more healing, Sustaining Vapors is completely insane. On AoE pulls, this is basically infinite health, and it's very easy to poison things. But Explosive Vapors, especially if you're playing with friends, is really good as well. Personally, I didn't find too much value from the Focus tree, Because yeah, there's a lot of crit bonuses, but I wasn't stacking crit super hard anyway, and I mostly built myself around ability and damage over time. Next up, abilities. How did I do these? Well, first of all, full points into transfusion. It has a low cooldown, and homing needles do quite a bit of damage. After that, I split my points between venom thrusters for the additional defenses and vampiric blast, so that when I convert clouds, they deal damage in addition to providing healing. Alternatively, you could go 3 points into deep breath, giving you the ultimate much faster and more consistently. But I personally found that I didn't need the ult that often, and a lot of my damage was actually coming from things like the detonation of vampiric blast, or the ticking poison from enemies standing in my clouds, or of course, just spamming transfusion on cooldown. For talents, I'm going to just zoom out here. I ended up going for Red Feast. Expose weakness also causes the target to heal all attackers, so this is a really good way to get a little bit of extra healing on Venomess. Plus, it's pretty good if you're supporting your friends, and you get a balance slot. I was not really building into crit, so I completely ignored Careful Strikes, but if you were building into crit, that would be the way to go instead. And personally, I don't think Speed Demon is that helpful. Because yeah, dodging to get weapon power is nice, but I don't think you're going to be maintaining those stacks all that often. Then for the remaining points, I pretty much just went with everything that synergized, plus grabbed Opportunism because it was nearby. Since I was already building into Expose Weakness, I took Expose Feedback, and Deadly Insight to make Expose Weakness, that's right, even better. So it's making things weaker, it's giving ult charge, and it's providing healing. Now in terms of how the build felt and how the build played, the biggest improvement for me was when I went from pure ability power, where I had like 13k total, to splitting to ability and weapon power. At around 11k AP and around 8k weapon power, I felt like my damage was much higher, even if my abilities are doing the most on AoE, and then my weapon special is primarily carrying on single target. Now after that, you'll want a little bit of critical strike chance. I've around 10%, which feels pretty good. I'm able to proc Expose Weakness fairly frequently, though it probably could be a little bit higher. Since this really isn't a crit build, I'm not going out of my way to stack crit power, and since I didn't really feel the need for them, I didn't go out of my way to stack defenses. Instead, I've just been stacking life, weapon power, ability power, and a little bit of crit chance for good measure. That said, I do think there are alternative ways to play this character, including a crit build, and I'd be really curious if you've had success with that. Please do let me know down below. That just doesn't happen to be the route that I took personally. Especially because when it comes to the playstyle of this build, landing a jump-heavy slam attack isn't that unreasonable. So that's how I've been building Venomess as of Wayfinder 1.0. Now let's talk a little bit about the gameplay and performance. I found that this build cleared very well, especially for large groups of enemies, and on bosses, once you get Shredder Toss online, it does absurd damage. It completely melts through things. Really, your only problem is going to be some of the phased encounters, such as the end bosses for each of the story chapters. Those are a little harder, and to be honest with you, that's the one case where I'd say Wingrave is better, just because this ultimate gives you invulnerability, so if you mess up and fail one of the mechanics, here you're probably going to die, whereas on Wingrave, as long as you remember to hit your ultimate, you might actually be fine. But in terms of consistent damage output, this felt way better than Wingrave. Having the Seeking Darts felt really good for sniping annoying foes that like to run out of range. And one basic combo that I would recommend doing a lot is to open with your dash, and then drop a grenade. The grenade will not only consume all the clouds, giving you a burst of healing, but it detonates, doing quite a bit of damage to enemies, and all the clouds bursting does even more damage to enemies. So, dash into grenade, really good for bursting down large groups of foes. Aside of that, fire off the darts on cooldown, and when you can group enemies up, or if you want to inflict a lot of stacks of poison on one singular tanky foe, absolutely do it. That said, if you're full health and you're expecting to take damage in a little bit, do the opposite of your grenade combo, where instead of dashing, then using grenade to consume the clouds, throw the grenade first for damage, then dash to create some clouds. These will deal damage over time, and then ideally, by the time you next take damage, you should have another grenade up that you can consume all those clouds with. They should still be persistent on the field. The other really important thing when it comes to playing this character is managing the Shredder Toss. So, your light and heavy attacks build up shield charge. The finisher from your shield heavy attack consumes it, generating a pip for Shredder Toss. When you use Shredder Toss, The shield bounces between multiple enemies and can bounce back and hit the same thing multiple times. This is really strong, and it completely melts through boss health. So, go into every boss fight you can with 3 pips. Beyond that, if you're just doing trash fighting mini-bosses, firing the skill off at 1 or even 2 pips is totally fine and will often insta-kill everything on the screen. Just again, watch out on those end chapter bosses as they can one-shot you with a few of their abilities. At this point, I've spent quite a bit of time playing the different characters. Early on, Wingrave felt, well, like a free win. Then later on, I found Nis to be really fun. And now, I find myself gravitating even more towards Venomess, because I like hitting buttons in games. I want to have something to do. And Venomess is absolutely the sort of character where you not only can use your abilities on cooldown, but you're actively encouraged to do so. Yeah, these are resources, and sometimes you want to leave poison clouds on the ground. But most of the time, you're able to consume all of those resources and use them to just blast out the damage and melt through foes, which leads to an active playstyle that's super enjoyable. Plus, if you're able to play well, even for the late mythic hunts, it's very easy to take on things that require 1,000 more power level than you have. I haven't ascended my weapon at all. I'm about halfway through ascensions on the character. You know, it's a little bit of a grind, it's taking me a bit. And I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage at all, even taking on many of the later endgame encounters. So, I don't know if Venomess is the strongest character in Wayfinder, and I don't know if his build is the strongest way to play her. But it is certainly the strongest build that I've played so far, and even aside of that, it's a really fun experience. But as I keep playing Wayfinder, and as I play other ARPGs, I'm going to continue sharing my experiences. So if you want to see more from me, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and ring that notification bell to be the first to see a new upload. With that said, I'm curious. What are some of your experiences with each of the other characters? Do you have a favorite? Is there someone that you really wanted to like, but you found a bit difficult to play? Let me know some of those down below. For me personally, the character that I want to like a lot, and I do find super fun, is Kairos. But every time I try to go into a high-end mythic hunt, I kind of just die on him. Because he's very squishy. He does a lot of damage, like a ton of damage. But he's very squishy, and I'm just a little too bad to play him effectively. That said, who knows? Maybe a month from now, I'll be making another video about how Kairos is my new favorite character because I found a setup that sets him up for success. But that's going to be it for me today. If you want to watch something else, maybe check out my thoughts on Wingrave and the build that I played with that. And if not, thank you for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.